But what I found quite beneficial with the swimmers is when they actually stopped looking at all of that and they started to focus on feel and being able to recognize what feels right, being able to recognize if perhaps they are doing the incorrect technique that we're wanting and how that's able to feel, how that feels, they will then able to course correct. And as a result, they're going to be ending up swimming much quicker. But if you're just constantly focusing on the splits or the times or how fast you can go, as you've said earlier, you want to swim from the inside out, you're missing that inside part.
The Effortless Swimming Podcast. Brenton here with Tasman, who we recently returned from the Maldives camp a couple of weeks ago. And on this episode, I want to cover the 12 takeaways that we got from the camp as coaches and 12 takeaways that you as an athlete or a swimmer can use in your own training and swimming to not only get better, but see progress hopefully a lot faster. So Taz, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So first, anyone who's part of our membership will have seen you in there. You sort of run our online membership and do a lot of our stroke analysis in there with me. So this is the first time on a podcast, so it's nice to have you joining me here. But you've also come on a couple of camps as well. So I thought it'd be great to chat and just cover some of the things that we saw coaching and some of the things that really worked for people to help them have those breakthroughs in their stroke and really make some big changes.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Well, the first one that we've got here is focus on the bottlenecks.
Yeah, so I mean, I think when you do an analysis, it can feel quite overwhelming to see, for example, if there are a lot of issues that are identified. We never want that to deter people because what tends to happen is that it's more, we're identifying all of the different areas, but ultimately there's one particular main area or the bottleneck. And if we can just focus on that one area, all of the other areas tend to get fixed. So for example, we had one swimmer during the analysis, his legs were splaying. He was rolling completely over. As he was breathing, his lead arm was dropping. And as a result of that, he wasn't getting in a high catch. So that can be quite overwhelming, right? For all four of those areas to be identified and to think that you need to focus on all four of those areas. But what helped there is we actually just focused on his over rotation and we identified over rotation as that bottleneck. So by only focusing on him getting a reach, getting the rotation from the reach as opposed to forcing that rotation, his rotation was reduced. So that allowed him to rock into a breath, keep the lead arm extended as he was taking a breath, keeping his legs together, getting in a high elbow catch. So yeah, ultimately he just focused on that one area and the cause, and it just kind of fixed all of the other symptoms. So that would just be my takeaway and my advice for people. If you do feel like there are a couple areas that you're struggling with, pick the one thing to focus on for the whole swim, let the rest go. And how you can do that is you just really want to be able to find that bottleneck. And we do have a checklist, right, that you can really just find the order that you can work from.
Yeah, that's right. It's like it can be very overwhelming when someone sees themselves swimming, especially if there's a whole bunch of things that are going wrong. And so, but quite often what we see is there's that one thing that if we just make that change, release that bottleneck, everything else just starts to fall into place. And so it can feel like a challenge to identify that bottleneck. But as you said, on our freestyle checklist, which we'll put in the show notes, it goes through the order that we like to analyze the stroke in. And so for the simplest way to put it is head and body position, rotation, and then we look at what the arms are doing in the catch in the pool and the recovery. And then there's also some timing things in there. Breathing is one as well. It depends on what they're doing with their breath, but that's usually one of the first things that we'd look at too. But that sort of sequence is how we like to teach the stroke, and how in the back of my mind, I've always got it there just as a sort of the template of how I would analyze someone's stroke. And it's, that bottleneck is often just the earlier thing in the line of things that they have to work on. And I think a good way to think of that too is swimming from the inside out, is making sure that we think about our core, our torso, right? We need to get this stuff right first, then we can go out to the extremities from there. So always thinking inside out with our swimming. So focus on the bottlenecks. Number 2, keep drills simple and focus on progression sets.
Yeah, so my experience with the swimmers is you really don't want to overcomplicate things with too many drills. You want to stick to a couple handful of drills, and what's more important here is as you are doing those drills, is to really have a progression plan in mind so that you can go from drill to free. Because a lot of feedback we get from some of the swimmers is I'm able to hold my stroke during the drill. As soon as I do it in freestyle, I just lose my stroke. So if you can just create a small progression milestones where you're constantly challenging yourself, you're bridging the gap from drill to free, and then you're making improvement steps by steps. That's the best way that you can slowly start. You can just think of it as building blocks, right? You're just slowly starting to add that. So a way that I like to do it, well, and it obviously depends on the area that you're doing, right? But go from drill and then go to catch up, because catch up's a really nice way to be able to control the stroke. And then from catch up, you can move on to free. And that's the same thing with aids. You can use fins or use a snorkel initially, challenge yourself a little bit more thereafter, do the drill without those aids, then progress to catch up, for example. You could do it with fins, without fins, and then progress to normal free. That just makes it far more manageable as opposed to taking a massive leap from going from drill and now trying to replicate those the technique that we're learning into normal free while doing like quite an intense set over a longer distance.
Yeah, it's such a nice approach because it can feel quite yeah, like if you go from just say like kicking on the side, for example, if you're working on rotation and then into swim, it might work. But if you were to do something like side kick into 616, into 636, and then
Yeah.
into full stroke swimming, it's a really nice way to build it up. And one of the swimmers that we worked with on camp, or one of the swimmers I worked with, one of the issues she was having was she just wasn't comfortable with her breathing. She would sort of hold her breath, wasn't exhaling through the nose, and so was just never really calm in the water. So we did like a 3-step progression. We went to just sink downs, where I'd get her to take a breath in, exhale through the nose, come straight back up, and repeat that 5 times. So starting with sink downs. Then we went into just floating on our front, arms and legs extended. Then we went into kick on the front with the arms extended, and then we went into swim. And she was able to build up through that sequence to then be able to just get that level of comfort where she could feel like her breathing was fine, the water was supporting her because she learned how to hold her body properly. And then she was able to do some 25s where she's like, all right, this is actually, I can stay calm. I don't need to feel that anxiousness or
Yeah.
overwhelm in the water.
For sure. It's making it bite size. I think swimming can be quite overwhelming to a lot of people. And so if you can just break it down into bite-sized chunks, just mentally even, it's far more manageable. It's easier to grasp your head around what you're needing to do. And then it just makes training far more enjoyable because you're not putting all that pressure on yourself in terms of getting it from the issue all the way to free.
Mm. Now, number 3, the value of community. And I think this is one that we especially see on camps. It's like a 5-day or a 7-day intensive where you're living with 15, 20 other swimmers, and you really get to know everyone very quickly just because you're seeing them for hours on end. You're having meals with them. But I think this is one that sometimes gets overlooked.
For sure. And I would say this would be one of the most important takeaways for myself, because, the swimmers really enjoyed the training, just the feedback that we got from them. They loved the analysis. They loved the technique improvements that they were making. But equally, they just really loved connecting with like-minded people. And I think swimming, it can be a little bit of an isolating sport as opposed to some of the others. You are quite dependent, on yourself to show up, to when you're putting in the work itself, you're either looking at the floor or you just head down and swimming open water. So if you can find some sort of a squad, if that's not possible, find an online community. So similar to the community that we really encourage on the effortless swimming membership, really as a place just to support you, so that you can be held accountable, or you can connect with people, or you can just share a laugh. I think if you can just encourage that engagement and that enjoyment of swimming, you will want to go to training the next day. It really just encourages swimming at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason that I don't think I've ever missed a session except if I've gotten like 2 hours sleep or something. Like I don't think I've missed a session in the last couple of years because I'm swimming with a squad and people expect me to be there because I've written the set. Uh, and it's just that, like, it's just that gets me out of bed, even if I'm tired or not feeling good. Like, it doesn't take much, really. It just takes some other people who are expecting me to be there. But that's just a way of getting to the pool. But I think the community aspect of it and having someone or having other people there just to kind of share the ups and the downs or having someone helping guide you. I mean, in terms of running effortless swimming, I've had the same basically business coach for 15, maybe 16 years now. And so in that community, like that's the thing that's kind of helped me along because otherwise, running something like this can be a bit of a lonely journey. You just kind of have to figure it out. But having someone there and other people there to kind of talk about stuff and what's working has helped me immensely. And so I think the value of like our effortless swimming coaching coaching members there, that's a big one where you're writing the squad workouts every month. You answering questions. We're doing our video analysis as well. So it's a really good way, especially if you're swimming solo, to be able to keep tapped in to that kind of thing where you're not doing it alone, because it does get kind of boring and kind of lonely if you're just doing it by yourself all the time.
Sure. Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, I was just thinking, with the on the membership, we just to actually try and get that engagement even more. There are the different features that I found are quite popular. So like the progress journals, swimmers are using that to really like hold themselves accountable, but at the same time check in on each other too, which is such a cool thing to see as well. Or you're able to, even if you are doing it as a lonely swimmer by yourself, so you're not necessarily training in a squad, but you're doing our workouts on the membership. I've seen swimmers connect over similar events that they will be entering, so they might be on separate sides of the world, but they see that they're both training for the same event. Then you've already got that connection, and you've got a like an online training buddy, which I think is very helpful too.
Absolutely. Now, number 4 is believe in yourself. So where's this one come from?
So I would say this would probably be the second most important one, or maybe it's on par with the connection. And this was a massive takeaway, especially I would say in the second week. So I think a lot of the times, especially if you don't come from a swimming background, or if swimming's not very much within the community, it can be daunting. And I think some swimmers can sometimes naturally maybe limit themselves mentally as opposed to actually knowing what their capability is. And so sometimes a breakthrough usually comes when you just stop doubting yourself and you test what you're able to do. And that's so much easier said than done. But if you do have, a community behind you or just one person there that is able to cheer you on, it makes it far easier. So if I can just give an example, in the second week, we had a swimmer who didn't come from a swimming background. Swimming wasn't something that they, actively did as part of growing up or even as an adult. And she was quite reliant on a toe float. So the first session in, I think we were swimming maybe 30 meters, and she really wanted to use this toe float. But what ended up happening, like her confidence just boosted. I think with the encouragement of the coaches and the encouragement of the other swimmers, she was able to see her ability in the water as well. And as a result, she at the end of the camp, we swam a lap around the island, right? So she swam the whole lap and very comfortably. And she only used the toe float for the first half, and the second half she went without. And the swell can be quite gnarly as well, and it was quite hectic on that day. So, if we just compare the progress of how she first started and her maybe self-doubt that she had as opposed to at the end where she just absolutely smashed the island swim, it was just so amazing to see.
Yeah, it's like huge change from in 5 days. Where
Yeah.
and I remember, we do a group welcome. Everyone sort of tells a bit of their story and where they're from and their level of experience as well. And we've never had anyone that we haven't gotten around the island, even if they're not a strong swimmer. I remember last year we had someone who was getting gassed out within about 30 meters and just like had to stand up, get the breath and go again. But I was like, it's all good. We'll get you around the island. And we did. It's like you can make some big changes in the course of 5 days. And I think for a lot of people, it's just very difficult, especially as an adult, to get any coaching, like the intensive coaching like this, to help them get the confidence, especially in open water. And so that's particularly the Maldives camp. I think that's probably the best one for this kind of thing, just because of where we are and how we were able to run it, where we're doing a lot of our technique coaching in the lagoon. You can sort of stand up, and we've got 3 coaches there. We've got 15 swimmers. So there's a lot of like one-on-one coaching and a lot of support there to help people get the tools that they need and the confidence that they need to be able to get around the island on the last day. So I thought when she was introducing herself, I thought, yeah, for sure, we're going to get you around the island. And I was swimming next to her for the first half, well, the whole way around actually, but the first half we're going against the current into the wind, and it took us about, it was a while, it was like maybe 30 minutes to go about 500 meters because of this current. And so I was swimming next to her, and I'm like, she must be absolutely buggered, because like we've been going nonstop and we're not moving anywhere, and you can hardly see the floor going, you're not hardly moving past it. But then when we sort of stopped after 500 or 600, I'm like, hey, how you going? It's like, good. It wasn't even out of breath. And I think if we'd done that at the start of the camp, it would have been a very different story. But just giving them some of the tools, like, all right, this is how we need to be breathing. This is how we need to be exhaling. Don't worry, you will make progress, even though you don't see yourself making much progress into the current. Like just some of those strategies that can really help you, get through those tough conditions. And it was great to see. And she wasn't the only one either who had those sorts of results, which was nice to see. Now, number 5, consistency over perfection.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, I think what a lot of swimmers, and I'm sure this is in most sport, right? But they can perhaps overanalyze their stroke, and they think they need to nail their technique instantly. But a good lesson here is just knowing that the breakthrough or the progress, instead of wanting to see progress by tomorrow, it's actually just more about constant steady practice and small changes that will lead to lasting improvement. So that's what we tend to do at the start of the analysis, is just prep everyone with that, as in, you're here for a week. We're going to try and get you, well, we're going to impart as much knowledge onto you as we can. You will see progress, but the main thing here is what you'll do after the camp with all of the tools that we've given. And so that's where the consistency comes from. What's very important here is, after the clinics or the camps or any coaching that you do or just a general analysis, right? It's really just to maintain what you've learned. And if you are swimming, for example, by yourself, that can be a little bit more challenging because you aren't going to have that coach to constantly be there to remind you. But that's really where the biggest improvements happen and where the difference can really count. So my recommendations would be there just to continuously remind yourself, just to stay consistent. Go into every training with a plan and specific goals. Set yourself small, medium, long-term goals, just really so that you've got small little stepping stones that you can work towards. And if you're just constantly putting in the small progress over time, you will start to see a long-lasting improvement, as opposed to just putting in the work for a week and then the following week you are maybe feeling a little bit more bushed or tired because you just weren't able to continuously keep it up.
And one of the things we're seeing in the WhatsApp groups afterwards is there's quite a few of the swimmers who like, well, I'm back in the pool and I'm actually getting pretty fatigued. I'm quite tired, more so than I normally would be. And the thing with that is that's very normal. I would expect a lot of the swimmers will be going through it because they're changing their stroke and they're thinking about it a lot. They just don't have that, or they don't have the muscle memory. They're going to be using different muscles as well, and it's just not natural right now. So that's really normal, and I've seen it for years and years that this is something that tends to happen after camps for a lot of the swimmers. Some certainly make nice progress immediately, but it's just because we're seeing changes. And if you're not feeling any difference, if you're not experiencing something that's noticeably different than what you used to, then you're probably just going back to old habits. So It's not always this upward trajectory straight away. Quite often there might be a solid 6 to 8 weeks of like feeling like, oh, is this actually doing anything positive for me? But then often they have that breakthrough. They're like, all right, it paid off and I just need to be consistent with it. And then I can see that perfection in the stroke a bit more. So yeah, it's all really normal stuff. And I think us as coaches, we need to just prepare them for that, know what to expect. And I think we do a good job of that, just reminding people you might not be 15 seconds faster per 100 when you go back next week. You might actually be a little bit slower. That's completely normal.
Sure, consistency is key. I think that's the main thing there. Just keep at it and you will see that progress.
And I think even on a personal note there, what we did as coaches every morning was get up, go for a swim around the island, which took about 30 minutes. And it wasn't really hard at any point. It was all just pretty, for the most part, aerobic swimming. But just swimming every day for 2 weeks, I've come home and I'm feeling really good after that.
Yeah.
Like normally I'd swim 3 times a week, do 4 to 5K. But this was nearly probably 13, 14 days of 2 kilometers or maybe more if we did an extra lap. But I've noticed a big improvement in my own swimming just from that consistency.
100%. I came back almost, it felt like flying in the water, right? And it's exactly what you've said. It's just like slowly getting you'll be just building it up slowly but surely without even thinking about it. And then, as you said, a couple of weeks later, you're like, oh, wow, like you'll start to feel the difference, even if you don't feel it initially.
Number 6 is process and feel over data.
Yeah. So I think, in this day and age, it's so normal to be checking the watches, be checking the data, but I think that can be a little bit counterproductive. There's obviously a big value for that, but what I found quite beneficial with the swimmers is when they actually stopped looking at all of that and they started to focus on feel and being able to recognize what feels right, being able to recognize if perhaps they are doing the incorrect technique that we're wanting and how that's able to feel, how that feels, they will then able to course correct. And as a result, they're going to be ending up swimming much quicker. But if you're just constantly focusing on the splits or the times or how fast you can go, as you've said earlier, you want to swim from the inside out, you're missing that inside part. And so, like a great example here is, the week we do the coaching and the analysis, and on the final day we do another analysis. Sorry. During that analysis, you see the guys start overthinking. They're like, I've been told to work on these 5 things, and then they aren't swimming as fluidly as what we'd want them to do. So my recommendation there would be is obviously keep an eye on the data. It's good, but don't let that drive your stroke. Focus on feel if you can. And if you are feeling like you are overthinking something, take a step back, just go for it and focus on the feel of the water. I think with one of the swimmers with the analysis, she was overthinking it so much. We even got her to pause. We did the other swimmers and then we redid her stroke and we said, like, just get out of your head. And she ended up swimming so beautifully. So yeah, just ultimately always just go for feel.
Yeah, that's and there was a couple in that first week as well. It was like I was thinking of 3 or 4 things and then it kind of fell apart. And so, all right, let's refilm. Let's just pick one thing to focus on. This is not the make or break of your swimming career, how you look in this video here. And especially when the camera's on, there's a lot of pressure for people. And they want to look better than they did at the start. So I get that. I get that want to like really nail the last video. But yeah, if you can. Hey, real quick, in case you didn't know, we run swimming camps around the world, from the Maldives, Thailand, Japan, Whitsundays, Galapagos Islands, plus a bunch of new locations for next year. So if you'd like to join us at a future camp and improve your swimming and explore and experience some of the best locations to swim in the world, then go to effortlessswimming.com/camps. We've got all the dates and locations listed there. A question I get all the time is, I'm not that quick. Will this camp be suitable for me? We have a wide range of speeds and abilities come to the camps. So as long as you can swim 1 kilometer, there's a very good chance that these camps will be suitable for you. And if you're not sure, just get in touch with us and we'll make sure that we do find you a suitable camp. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the podcast. Have the feeling of knowing what it's like when you're doing things correct and knowing what it's like when you're not doing things correctly. That in itself is a big takeaway, because sometimes people don't have that understanding of how it should feel when you're actually doing it correctly, because they just don't know what they're doing, because they've never seen themselves swim. And so that's one of the things that I think, would hopefully do quite well, is building up that awareness of what's right, what's wrong, and then what does that actually feel like. So you can take away that feeling and become your own coach, where you know whether you're getting it right or not, and that way you can make a change. Because if you don't have that, it's unlikely long-term you'll make any long-term changes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially if you are really focusing on an area, then focus on feel and use the data to as a way to like inform whether you're on the right track, right, in terms of stroke counting and time. But try avoid using that data as the leading motivator behind the swimming, at least, as I said, like while you are refining your technique. Do it by feel, use it to kind of aid and give you additional support. But if you can really get that good feeling for the water, you'll be good to go, and you'll always be able to course correct. You'll always be able to adapt. You'll start to feel how certain paces feel, as opposed to needing to rely on your watch. I mean, I think that's how we grew up swimming, right? So that would just be my takeaway. If you can kind of get to the point where you don't need to use the data as much, and you can really base the technique, the pacing, the time based on feel, you just become a far more knowledgeable swimmer.
So yeah, like back in our day, pre-tech suits, pre-watches, could only have the 60-second clock to go by. Yeah. All right, number 7. Simple cues unlock big changes.
So I think this was one of like a key success and a takeaway, I think, for us coaches and the swimmers as well. You would think that, who would think that a simple cue could make such a big difference? But it really can, in terms of connecting how the swimmer connects to the technique. So throughout the camp there were ample cues that were used, but even
Some more than others,
two,
yeah.
some more than even 3 weeks later, the swimmers are still using them, and that's just such a great way, I guess, for them to lock in on. They just associate the technique with the cue. It gives them less things actually to focus on, because they're not now needing to think about, like for example, one of the cues that I use with my swimmers is when they would breathe, their lead arm would drop. And so it would be like a simple thing of like up, up, up. And instead of them now having to think, every time I breathe, I need to try to push my lead arm up, all of that was explained beforehand. Now we've got the cue, they know what they need to do. And it's stuck with them. They're still using it now. And I think that's what's going on in their head. So I think, these kind of quick reminders, they can really just cause like just it to click a little bit better, or the penny to drop technically, and that also just really helps reinforce conditioning. So I'm just trying to think a couple of other ones that come to mind that were quite successful and popular were the performance platform. So just that's a great way to just think about the positioning of your body positioning, opening up the chest, really be able to use your chest as an anchor to support your stroke. Up, 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 as I said, just to keep the lead arm up. And then a third one that comes to mind that really stuck with a lot of the swimmers was just using the pocket of power, right? So that's just a great way to have an understanding of, if you can get a solid press back past the hip, it's going to help you get that reach and rotation forward. And that just, as I said, it just really clicked with a lot of the swimmers. So use the simple cues as much as you can. They can really make big changes in terms of how you connect the technique and all of the information that we're giving you, and then how you can then apply it in the water.
You gave me some breaststroke coaching on one of the days towards the end there, which it was really needed, because I don't do much breaststroke, and you being primarily a breaststroker, so but it was really good. So one of the things you noticed with my breaststroke was, as I was coming in to the recovery here, my elbows, I wasn't sort of keeping a good catch. My elbows were coming too narrow, and so one of the things I was thinking yesterday at training was just elbows wide, keep the elbows wide as I'm going through my catch here. And that helped a lot. And then another one was actually dropping the hips at a certain phase of the stroke. And then another one was actually kicking down more than sort of backwards. Now, some of those things might sound a little bit maybe opposite of what you would think you need, right? Like we don't want to drop our hips and go low. We want to be kicking back in a way to go forwards. But just for what I needed in the stroke, those couple of cues in the breaststroke had me feeling really, really good yesterday. So, yeah, it doesn't take much, but just like a phrase, a word, goes a very long way. And especially in the heat of the moment when you're racing or when you're going fast, you can't be thinking about a whole lot. It's just got to be simple. And so I found that when we were doing these sprints yesterday in breaststroke, it's like elbows wide, drop hips. It's like, all right, I can do this. Not every stroke, but I can do it. And it started to feel really good.
Yeah, for sure. It just makes it more manageable. I think that's, if I'm just like listening to the themes of what we're saying, we just really want to be able to make it manageable. It really doesn't have to be this overwhelming thing in terms of thinking about the in-depth technique. I think if you can get a solid understanding of what you need to do, why you need to do it, pair that with a cue, then as you said, when you are swimming and perhaps you're pushing yourself, or perhaps you're doing an open water race and there's so many other variables you need to think of, if you can just have that one cue that sticks in your mind, it's far more manageable for you to just be able to implement the technique that you're really wanting to do.
Now, number 8, the power of reframing.
So I think what I found quite interesting with the camp is if something, I think some swimmers, they might not perhaps grasp the concept, or perhaps it was explained one way. Every coach has got a different way of explaining things, I should say. And so I think what's important just as a swimmer to be mindful of, and perhaps a coach as well, that if you feel like a concept hasn't clicked, it just needs to be reframed in a certain way so that you can really identify it. So I might teach something a certain way in comparison to you, or in comparison to one of the other coaches, Gary. But I think what was very successful on the camp is because that there were so many different coaching voices. Everyone was able to find someone that they were able to identify with. So that would just be just a tip there, I should say, that if there is a concept and you are feeling perhaps a bit lost on it, it's not you. It just might be the way in which the concept is being explained. And so just keep digging, do research, chat to other people. They might just be able to explain it in a way that really just clicks for you.
One of the ones that comes to mind there is when we were working on the timing and rhythm of the stroke, we had him try a few different ways of thinking of it. One of them was with that waltz tempo, where it's like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And for some people that worked really well. And then Gary said, you might even prefer like a kind of an uneven tempo, where it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, in terms of like one stroke's a bit quicker, second stroke's a little bit slower. And particularly if you breathe to one side, that kind of timing can be quite useful. So different way. And a lot of people said, actually, that worked really well for me. And I've never felt that before. So yeah, just hearing things explained slightly differently can help it click. Let's go on to number 9 here. So rhythm is topical. Rhythm is everything.
Rhythm is everything. I would say, in terms of the feedback from what the swimmers gave us, in terms of the different areas of the technique that we worked on, the main thing that stuck out to them was the fact of that swimming should be swum like a waltz, which is very much what you said earlier. I think some swimmers, they tend to swim maybe a little bit more staccato, or they're lacking that flow. So it's more like stroke, 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 stroke. But if you can just be mindful of the fact that ultimately you really want to be able to waltz through the water, or ice skates. I think that's a reference that you used. It will really it will really help you find a natural rhythm, which is ultimately what we want to do. We really want to be able to flow in the water as opposed to fighting the water. So the cue, like swimming like a waltz, is a really great way to think about swimming. Or another cue of just being able to do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, just to really help find your rhythm. That's the way to go. So I had a swimmer, so he was swimming a little bit more staccato. So he was swimming very much like it was one stroke, then the second stroke, then the second stroke, then the next stroke. And he explained that he had an aerobic base, so he felt quite comfortable being able to, maintain distance. But he was more so struggling to maintain the pace over long distance. So I think it was on day one, I just explained, instead of swimming very much stop start, aim to swim like a waltz, aim to find that rhythm, that flow, that 1 2 3. And it just clicked for him, and he said it just made sense. And so I think he ended up being one of the swimmers who swam around the island the most, just because he was so keen on the fact that he was just saving so much more energy now. He wasn't exerting as much energy with each stroke. So yeah, I think it's so amazing that just, as that simple cue is just able to help swimmers see how to apply themselves in the water, find that efficiency that we ultimately want to be aiming for, and not fight the water as much.
Yeah, it's that seemed like an important one for quite a few of the swimmers at camp.
Yeah,
Was with that my feeling is they were focused so much on the stroke and the technical details of it, the catch, making sure I'm getting nice and long, that they were just missing that rhythm element to it.
yeah,
And so when we really got them just keeping things, I think, moving in front, it's like we never want to stop and pause. We've always got to keep that lead hand in motion, but it can take its time going through that front of the stroke. Then it's almost like ice skating, or almost not like you're kind of falling or rolling into the next stroke rather than that stop start that you talked about. And it's just so much easier. And the way
yeah,
I like to kind of demonstrate this, if we're doing analysis, is like if you stand up and you walk and you pause and then you take another step and you pause, it's like, well, no one's walking that way. And we don't want to swim that way either, because
yeah,
it'll take a long time to get from one end to the next. So always making sure that we're keeping things in flow. So the one that I like is just keeping that lead hand in motion, just making sure you
mm,
always keep that rolling through. So rhythm's everything. Now the 10th one here is practice technique on land first.
yeah. So I think we're all a big advocate for this, but this would be again at the top there in terms of one of the most important things. So technique, it just can become so much easier to know what to do in the water if you can do it outside of the water first. If you can get the feel, that understanding of, where your arm should be, if you are extending forward, the depth that the arm should be in, if you are doing, for example, recovery, and, we talk about this elbow-led recovery, what does it actually feel like? If you can do that on land and replicate it there, it's going to be 10 times easier to be able to do it in the water. And so, I think a couple of examples that we gave to the swimmers was if you're really battling, you can even do the technique in front of a mirror, just so that you can see what you are doing, what you should be aiming for. If you can do therabands, especially for that high elbow catch position, again, just so that you can see what does the elbow forward look like, what does it feel like, that slow to fast movement that we're wanting to engage in, with the catch through to the follow through. The same thing there. If it can just be replicated from the outside to inside the water, it's going to be so much easier for you to be able to do. It will be easier for you to be able to adapt as you go at the same time.
Mm. Yeah, and one of the ones where I saw a nice change from doing it out of the water to in the water was when we were going through. We're starting with the reach and the rotation. So what I had swimmers do was they were standing up, one arm up in front, one arm by the side, and I wanted them to get used to their shoulder coming up to their cheekbone, and then just that little bit of rotation as well. And we're really opening up
Yeah,
through the underarm there, and just getting them used to that movement, because that's where we want to be at the start of every stroke.
yeah,
And some of the feedback from some of the swimmers there after doing that and then going into some swimmers, like it just, the stroke felt longer. So I think a lot of people are just, they're either too flat, or like this shoulder will just drop quite low and then the elbow is going to drop with it. So if they set themselves up in that like streamline or that base position there, it's one of the main positions you want to get used to being in. And so I saw a nice sort of correlation there from just practicing that while we're standing first and
yeah,
then in the water, and also the TheraBand stuff too. Like there's a lot of swimmers got it pretty quickly, which was nice. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of swimmers have started to do this stuff already. But there's a few swimmers who it's like, no, you're just pulling straight away with that elbow. So let's just slow it down. Let's get that movement. All right, now we're starting to build that muscle memory. And if you're not doing it right out of the water, there's almost no chance it's going to happen in the water. So I think it's a really important one, especially doing some stuff in the mirror. Because I've looked at myself in the mirror doing swimming. We're talking swimming here. I've looked at myself in the mirror with practicing some swimming stuff, and I'm like, all right, this isn't actually what it feels like is happening here. So it's a good one to do.
For
Number
sure. And
11.
oh,
Sorry, yeah.
sorry, I was just going to say on that note, just push the TheraBand. I just want to advocate for it. I know at camp I was advocating for it. I think I sold it so much that the swimmers were so keen on doing it. And even now I'm doing like weekly check-ins just to make sure that that they are doing it. Just because, as you said, like especially the high elbow catch one. So we do there is that TheraBand routine. I think it's on the membership, but if you can just strengthen it outside of the water, you'll have a strong catch and pull inside of the water. So just my PSA, do that, the TheraBand halber catch.
Love it. Number 11, use contrast drills.
Yeah, so this is just a really great way for swimmers to feel the difference with what to avoid and what to aim for. So I think we did it almost with every session, especially when we're focusing on body position and the kick. And you can do it really with a lot of the areas of the technique that we're focusing on. But I would just encourage, I guess, swimmers to do this because a lot of swimmers found like a breakthrough moment in the sense of how challenging it can be if you are doing the incorrect technique and how much energy that's required, as opposed to when you are doing the technique that we should strive for, how much less energy that required, how much more effortless they felt in the water. So one that comes to mind is with the kick, right? So we get them to do 25-meter kicking super wide, super deep, really big kicks from the knee. And I think the guys swam one length and they were like panting. They were so out of breath. And then on the way back, we said, okay, change it. We want streamline kicks, kicking from the hips, feet nice and loose. And the difference there in terms of, as I said, the effort and the energy level required, it was so great for them to be able to see that, because that allows them to recognize, right, what they should be aiming for. And when they're just swimming normal now, they'll feel the difference, that feeling that we've been talking about. They will be able to feel now if, their kick is now actually creating a lot of energy wastage that we don't need, and they can just kind of course correct it and kick streamline as we'd want them to do.
And I'd say aside from the kick exercise, when we do the contrast drills, because we wanted to go like from one extreme to the other, like really make it different on both ends, like really go to the extremes. But more times than not, what they feel like is extreme is not extreme whatsoever. And a couple of years ago, there was like a communications course run by a guy, Vin Jiang, and we had to do a similar thing in terms of speaking. So it's like you have to speak really slowly and then really quickly. And then you've also got to do the same thing with like pitch and tone and volume. And when I was watching others do it and when I saw myself do it, I'm like, there is just such a little range that I'm operating within there.
Yeah.
That, but it feels really big, even though it's like, it's not much. So, what I'd like to try and do when we do those contrast drills is like, just give them permission to like really go to the extreme, because it's probably much less than what you think.
For sure. I think another great one was a body position. Like that's another great one where, or just, the head position while doing that too. I was just thinking, I think some swimmers, when we asked them to swim quite forward with their head, it wasn't as forward as it could have been, right, in terms of the range. But then when we got them to really go for it, their hips were like all the way down there, and that's ultimately what we want, right, with the contrast drills, is, as you said, getting that extreme version and then really trying to refine it on the way back.
Now, number 12, sliding and pack swimming.
So this is a great one to do. I think a
You
lot
should
of
have
the
done it at the start,
swimmers,
by the way,
yeah.
too. I reckon. Yeah, would have saved everyone a lot of extra meters. But yeah, sorry, go on.
Next year we'll just reorder the way in which we do the camp. But yeah, I think sighting and pack swimming, I think most of the swimmers were, I would say like 80% were did more open water and probably about 20% were more pool swimmers. So it was a very important topic to do. And the main takeaways there, and it actually came from one of our swimmers. So she was a Taekwondo champ. And but she just gave such a great analogy with it in the sense that, when she was fighting, you really just have to be mindful of the fact that you are going to get knocked, you are going to get hit, and that doesn't take you off guard. That doesn't make you anxious. It's part of the process. And so if you can expect it, brace for it, you'll then be able to adapt faster and feel more in control. And as soon as she said that, I think a lot of us were like, that's such a great way to think of it. So with sighting and pack swimming, that's just a really nice breakthrough that I think you've mentioned before, you don't want to be a victim in the situation, but in addition to that, it's inevitable that, especially at the start, or when you're going around the buoys, that there are going to be swimmers on top of you. It is going to be uncomfortable. It just is what it is. And so if you cannot get shaken, if anything like that does happen to you, and instead, if you can just expect for something like that to happen, stay calm, be prepared, allow yourself to be able to adapt, stay confident and find your line, you will be just fine in terms of navigating through that.
Mm. Yeah, it was interesting listening to shout out to Fee. She talking about that, like when someone first gets into Taekwondo, is when they get hit, there's that anxiety, and it's like, oh, like
Yeah.
there's that sort of shock. But the more you do it and the more you expect it, it's just like you get hit and you just keep rolling with it. And it's no different in open water because you are going to get a few knocks. You might be like Abby and hurt your finger trying to make a break between two people. Like it's just part and parcel with open water swimming. But the more you do it, and the more you just accept that that's going to happen, the more you can just keep swimming. And like one of the main
Yeah.
things with pack swimming is just don't stop. Just keep going, even if you get cut off, or even if maybe you're going to get a little bit hurt perhaps, but just keep swimming, and that way you're not going to get swum into the back of, and you'll keep with the pack. And I think sighting too was a big one. We would send people off. We'd send like 3 groups of 5, so we'd have 5 swimmers go, and another 5, and another 5. And I mean, in each group, there's usually at least one person who just has a tendency to veer left or right. So if they're not sighting, they're just going across everyone, and it happened every time. And so there is a tendency for a lot of swimmers to just go in one direction. And
Yeah.
the reason that happens a lot of the time can be if someone's crossing over. And if they're crossing over, then they have to push out. And when they push out, they start to veer. That's one of the reasons for it. But whatever the reason is, it's just something that we need to be aware of. And I think a good exercise is like what we did at the camp, is swim for 20 or 30 strokes, eyes closed, try and go straight, and just see where you end up. And that can give you an idea of roughly where you would normally veer. But the main thing is just sight regularly enough so that you do keep on track,
Yeah.
even if your stroke has a tendency to go off in one direction.
For sure. And on that note as well, so I think even with sighting, some guys would swim skew. And what 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 it came down to is the fact that, and this sounds so simple, and every time I say it, people laugh, but it's really what's happening is you need to sight with purpose. So some swimmers just lift their head because you're saying sight, but they're
Yeah.
actually not right. They're not actually locking in on their object. So just another tip that I would give all swimmers, and I think what 10, it ended up working well with the swimmers, was as you go, if you're struggling to really find one particular object, at least be mindful of the area that you're wanting to sight. And every time you lift your head, just really try and clock in and then continue to swim. You just, because sighting is it is gonna take a little bit more energy. It is gonna break your rhythm a little bit. So if you are going to do it, you need to do it with purpose. Otherwise, there's no reason to do it.
Mm. Yeah, it's a great point. It's so how can you still be sighting in like and going off in that direction? It's like,
Yeah.
well, because you're looking forwards but not actually looking.
Yeah.
But that's just all part and parcel with learning these skills and becoming a competent and a confident open water swimmer. Um, Tas, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Our next Maldives camp is going to be in August 2026. We've got one date added. There's only I think 4 spots left for that, but I'm going to add another week before that. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll include the link in the show notes. But we've got a whole bunch of other camps coming up next year as well. And we are about to head off to Thailand for our Hell Week camp, which is slightly more pool based with a little bit of open water. But just a lot of fun. And for anyone who loves swimming and loves pushing themselves, Hell Week is a good chance to do it. So we'll see you there in a couple of weeks' time. And thanks again for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks, Brent.